Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
What are the challenges and opportunities for the next generation of farmers and ranchers? We'll talk with a group of young beef industry professionals and get their perspective on the future of our industry.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Ochsner. Thanks for joining us. We've talked often on this show about the world's growing population and the critical role U.S. beef will play in feeding the world. But in order to meet this challenge, we're going to need the next generation of beef producers to be able and willing to engage in our industry. So how do we make that happen? Fortunately, we've got a great group of young professionals here to share some wisdom about the issues they've faced and how they've overcome those issues. Macy Hurst is from Missouri. Macy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, Kevin. Thank you for having me. As you mentioned, I'm from Missouri, currently reside in Jefferson City, the capital city, and I grew up on a few hundred head cow-calf operation just south of Jefferson City, where I pretty much was born into my passion. I was blessed to find that at a very young age, and currently am in business with my mom, Stacy, and my little sister, Emma, and we have a Lady Livestock Company. We're a registered Black Angus herd between Jeff City and Lake Ozark, and we're just happy to be in the industry with our fellow cattle producers and to continue the tradition of my family and so many that came before us.
Great to have you. And next, from Wisconsin, we have Tressa Lacey.
That is correct, yes. I originally am from Missouri, so I grew up on a Missouri backgrounding operation, and then I found myself in Wisconsin in 2017. My work took me there. And I've really enjoyed getting to know people in Wisconsin and getting involved in the industry. I'm actually the president-elect for our Wisconsin Cattlemen's Association.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
And from the Big Sky state of Montana, Rocky Forseth. Rocky, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Kevin. I would be a third-generation rancher on both sides of my family. I'll be the third generation to own livestock there in northern Montana. And off-farm, I also work for Allied Genetic Resources, a genetics company, and then I'm a representative for Superior Livestock as well.
Outstanding. Well, I've got to begin with a simple question, and that is you probably all have friends and relatives that have chosen maybe less risky, less capital intense, and maybe more profitable lines of work. What caused you to choose the beef cattle industry as your career?
As I kind of mentioned, I mean, so many of us have this experience where we're born into the industry and we just get bit by that bug at such a young age. It's hard to get rid of, and wouldn't want to, quite frankly. It's a passion, a livelihood, and I think that's something that's unique about the beef industry and agriculture in general, is that what we do on a daily basis is so much a part of who we are as people, and our love for the land and the livestock, and for producing a safe, healthy protein for our consumers. And it's just something I knew from a young age. I started buying cattle when I was 8 years old, and I haven't gone a day without owning them since, and I hope I never do.
Outstanding. Tressa?
My story is a little bit different. So I'm the youngest of three, and we actually sold the farm when I was in 5th grade, whereas both of my siblings were able to graduate and go off to college with the farm life. So I basically feel like I got gypped. Yeah. And I am the only one of my siblings that is currently in the industry. It is interesting. I've always wondered about that, but I feel like it's because the passion was instilled in me at such a young age, but then I didn't get to continue developing through that within my childhood, so I have to hold on to it for my entire adulthood.
That's neat. What a great story. Rocky?
Yeah, I was just thinking back, I think I sold my first bull when I was 4 years old. My dad walked in the ring with me at a consignment bull sale and carried me in the ring. We sold my first bull. I think he brought $800, so he wasn't a barn burner.
You're right.
But I mean, that was, like I said, 4 years, I've never really thought about doing anything else. It was always just natural. It's part of, like Macy said, the bug bit me very young. It's part of who I am, I think.
That's outstanding. You each mentioned some off-farm jobs, and Rocky, gosh, sounds like you have 2 or 3 jobs in addition to your ranch job. But I'm curious, what role does that play, and how important do you see that as being part of the mix when one's getting started in this business?
Yeah, through my 2 professional areas, Allied and Superior, puts me on roughly 70 or 80 ranches a year. Okay. When you go to 70 ranches in 1 year, you see 70 ways to do things, 70 different ways. Not all are right, not all are wrong. That being said, I can take those things back to my place, and that changes my perspective on the way that I make decisions. That changes just kind of my thought process in terms of why do we do this? Why are we doing what we're doing? And make sure that I think about those things logically, because I can back that up and think about other ways that other people do things. And I think that's valuable.
Trissa?
Yeah, so I'm the Regional Operations Director for Transova Genetics for the Great Lakes region. So living in Wisconsin, which is a pretty heavy dairy state, I've had a lot of exposure to that part of the industry that I did not grow up with at all. And although I do have some beef clients in my region, it's just been really interesting to learn from the dairy industry and those producers, and then see how I can connect that back to beef, especially as we see a lot of dairy producers moving to raising, animals for beef, whether it's a crossbred or just a Holstein steer going into the food chain.
Excellent. And what about you, Macy?
So I'm an account executive at Modern Litho. It's a print company out of Jefferson City, Missouri, but we print for people all over the country and really the world. And I was actually prior a customer to them, as I was the editor of a livestock magazine. So similar to Rocky and Tressa, it's kind of complementary in that I get to work with a lot of breed associations, livestock groups, anybody really who has a magazine or commercial print. And so I love getting to work with my fellow ag folks in that way. But I also get to work with a lot of people who have no exposure to agriculture whatsoever, which is an awesome opportunity for advocacy. And I love having those conversations with those people, sharing those experiences with them, calming their concerns they may have about where their food comes from. And then I also get to work with a lot of ag and non-ag companies through kind of a communication side business I have, doing some freelance editing, writing, graphic design. And that's a lot of fun too, because I get to read and edit a lot of work from a lot of really good agricultural writers and experts, and learn in that way too.
You've all mentioned the benefit of learning, but none of you mentioned income or insurance. Is that any part of the equation of having a off-farm job, Rocky?
Yes, absolutely. I'm transitioning currently from a commercial operation to all registered seed stock, and fastest way to do that is through embryo transfer. And as you might know, that's relatively expensive. Not something we're going to do with the margins in a commercial cow-calf operation. And so I'm subsidizing that significantly from my professional income, for sure.
You as well? Insurance, income, those things important to you?
Yes, my husband and I, we just bought our farm in 2018 and have been starting from scratch. He's an ag engineer, so we get to be in the ag world professionally and then personally pretty much all the time. But yeah, starting from scratch, the infrastructure, building the barns, putting in the water lines, fence, and then buying cattle, and then buying all the equipment to make hay. There's no way we could do that if we didn't have our own income.
Very capital intensive. So what would you say to other folks in the industry in terms of encouraging them to either get involved, or if they're already involved, to stay involved in the beef cattle industry? Macy?
I think who you surround yourself with makes all the difference. I know. So part of my story is when I was a senior in high school, my parents got divorced, and that led to pretty much the sale of our entire operation and kind of life as we know it coming to an end. Right. And that was a really tough time for us, obviously personally, but also all having these very deep ties to who we are as cattle producers. Mm-hmm. And so my mom and my sister and I kind of sat down and had a conversation about starting Lady Livestock Company. That's kind of the birth of that was through the ashes of that situation, but we had such a strong support network, whether it was our neighbors out at our farm, if it was the local livestock market owners, if it was, our state NCBA, beef council and cattlemen staff. Yes. It was such an important part of what we did. Our significant others are extremely supportive. We've got a good financial team and, legal team. And there's so many things that you have to consider, I think, when starting a business or wanting to go into agriculture, that having those people you can reach out to when you buy your first farm and you say, hey, can I get financed for this? Or what kind of tax issues am I going to have? Or whatever that looks like. So I call it kind of my board. I go to my board with big decisions. Yeah, So having those people on your team, I think, means everything. Yeah. And then also the ability to ask questions. I think that's so hard for so many people, and especially in the beef industry, I call it like our cowboy culture. It's very prideful because we have so much to be proud of, but sometimes that makes it really hard for us to ask questions and to learn and to open our minds to new markets or new opportunities or something that, Dad and Grandpa didn't do, but it could work for us.
That's great. Yeah. Tressa?
For me, I think it would just be choose where you want to get involved. Okay. Whenever I moved to Wisconsin, the work that I was doing for Transova was in the state of Wisconsin, so I got to know a lot of producers, predominantly dairy. But I'm a beef girl, so I decided to join our Wisconsin Cattlemen's group because I wanted to meet people with like interest. And then from there, I chose to stay involved because I saw how important it is to have producers involved in policy. But then I was able to build my board in Wisconsin. Not growing up there or not going to college there, I did not have like that natural network of people. But just last night, I was talking to another Cattlemen member, and he was giving me advice on, purchasing land, a certain law I need to look into with the banker. And I wouldn't have that resource if I hadn't chosen to get involved.
That's great. Rocky?
Yeah, I mean, as we get involved in these things and you become a part of that board, or you get your own board, however you want to look at that, those people become more and more important to your business every day. People that I meet, like for example, a friend of mine who was a friend of mine before he was a hedging expert. He's a broker. He's the guy that I hedge my calves with now. And before I met him, I would have never made that decision. I would have been subject to the market and things like that. And not to mention that it also opens up other opportunities that you didn't know existed. Like, for example, grass insurance. For me, you'd never think you'd buy insurance on grass, but when it doesn't rain, that's relatively important. I would not have thought about doing that unless I'm involved. We've never done that historically, and getting involved, getting to know folks outside of our circle, that helps you get to know those kinds of things.
That network is incredibly important. And coming up, we'll talk a little more about the benefits of getting involved in both your state and national cattle organizations. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
By installing Ritchie waterers, you save water while keeping it fresh and always available to your animals. You protect the land by keeping natural water clean and soil healthy. And you conserve power because they're energy efficient. We're committed to helping you create a prosperous, sustainable, and regenerative future. Because we know, like you know, that every saved drop matters. Ritchie, fresh water for life.
Weeds will rob me of my investments. The weeds are not palatable to cows. They will not eat them, or if they do eat them, some of them may be toxic. So there's a return on investment by allowing there to be more grass available to be grazed by the cattle.
Join the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. There are big benefits to being a member. You'll get industry news in the National Cattlemen, email updates in the NCBA Beef Bulletin, plus discounts just for NCBA members. Join by calling 866-233-3872 or online at ncba.org.
Did you know you can get reimbursed for attending cattle industry educational events? The Rancher Resilience Grant helps cattle producers attend valuable programs such as Cattlemen's College and Stockmanship and Stewardship training sessions. Local, state, and national events qualify for the grant, and successful applicants can receive money back to help cover registration fees and hotel expenses. To apply for the Rancher Resilience Grant, go to ncba.org and click on the Producer tab.
We're back now with our talented and passionate panel of young producers. Rocky, I want to begin with you. What's your advice to folks that are just getting started?
Well, I think, nothing about the beef business. We don't make any decisions in the beef business that are short term, within reason. Everything about our business is long term. The bulls we buy this year are going to sire the 10-year-old cows on our outfit 15 years from now. So if we think about it with that lens, I think it's important to make sure that we have a plan, and that plan has to have a long-range component to it. It's all going to change because every good plan changes. And so if you're just coming into the business, just entering the business, I guess I'd have two pieces of advice. One would be, don't be afraid to start small, and the other would be to have that long-range plan. For me, I mentioned earlier that we're transitioning. My wife and I are taking on more ownership, and my parents would like to sort of slow down. My parents are commercial operators. We want to be seed stock producers. And so with that begins sort of an exit and entrance strategy for my folks and for my wife and I. And our plan is to employ that embryo transfer work. We're going to place embryos in my parents' cows, use them as recipients, and that will be the start for our seed stock operation. A lot of things between now and implant time are going to change. A lot of things between now and the time that we sell those first bulls are going to change. But we have a loose outline of our goals and a loose outline of our plan in terms of us taking on more of that ownership and more of that role, and my folks sort of stepping back just a bit.
Excellent. Macy?
Yeah, I think having a plan in place, like Rocky said, is such a crucial part of your success, because all of your decisions will affect the outcomes in, maybe a week, maybe 10 years. And for me, doing business with family is so hard, but also has so many rewards. And so I think being able to plan and kind of come up with strategies with those people, and then also really lay down a long range plan, my sister just got married. I have a significant other who is very, very involved in the operation, which is great and a huge help. And we all three, my mom, sister, and I, of us have off the farm jobs. And so just divvying out those responsibilities, and what does this look like in the future whenever we incorporate significant others and we start having kids, and maybe we start herds of our own, or what if we move away? What does that look like? And how can we make sure that in the next years we can sustain ourselves as a business and still make sure the cattle are being fed and everything's being taken care of? And I think that applies too if you're doing business with people you're not related to. Maybe you're working for a farmer or rancher in your community. What does that look like when they retire or when they are ready to hand over the business? Is that going to you? Is that going to kids that live on the farm? Is that going to kids who maybe don't want anything to do with it? I think that kind of succession planning is such a crucial part of sustainability, not only of a happy, functional family, but also the business, of course, and also our industry as a whole, making sure that the people who are passionate about it and want to be in it are given the opportunities to really thrive in that position.
That's great perspective. You all mentioned the importance of networking, and I want to come back to that and say, what has been the role and the benefit of being involved in either the state level cattlemen's organization, NCBA, or other industry organizations? Tressa?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I joined Cattlemen's in Wisconsin, to establish that network. I stayed and got more involved with the organization, moving into a committee chair and then board member, and now, incoming president. And that was opportunities that were presented to me. Whenever I joined, I never imagined that I would be there in 5 years. But beyond that, it's given me an opportunity to build a network outside of Wisconsin. So I was fortunate enough to represent Wisconsin Cattlemen's on YCC this year.
Oh, neat.
That was a phenomenal experience. It's very bittersweet that it's a once in a lifetime thing. It's kind of like when you go to high school and then you graduate and you're sad, but I only had 9 days. I didn't have 4 years. And so I'm really fortunate to be involved with NCBA and get to see those people and see them be successful in their organizations, in their states, in their operations. And I have a whole plethora of people all across the country that I can reach out to with questions. And something that happens on the West Coast may not be applicable to my state, but it might be. And so I really love that from both a policy side, but then an operation side as well.
Oh, that's great perspective. Any particular benefits you've seen?
Yeah, Macy and I share a class of trailblazers together, and through NCBA and the Cattlemen's Beef Board, and that I would just echo what Tressa said in terms of the group that you get to know. Those become long-term friendships. Those are people that I feel like I can reach out to anytime, really, about anything, and I think that involvement just grows that network of people that you're going to get to know.
Outstanding. Great perspective. When we return, we'll have more insights from our panel of young producers. Stay with us.
Handle feed, waste, and other materials on your operation with John Deere equipment. Weigh feed on the go with dynamic weighing. And move materials faster without spilling with the Level to Horizon feature on 6R tractors. Move and stack bales easily and clean up brush and debris with improved grapple work on 5 Series tractors. Get into tight spaces with skid steers and wheel loaders. And check calves, fences, and more with John Deere Gators. Ask your John Deere dealer to learn more.
Cattle producers across the country work hard to care for their animals and their land. The USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service is there to help. Find out how you can work with NRCS to develop a conservation plan for your operation. Find possible funding resources for implementing conservation practices, or get free expert advice on ways to improve your farm or ranch. Visit the website nrcs.usda.gov today.
Are you looking for top quality genetics to improve your herd? Then check out Whitestone Farms' annual performance-tested bull and female sale the first Saturday of May. It's an opportunity to buy some of the best cattle in the industry, including sons from the Angus breed's top bulls. Whitestone Farm uses cutting-edge genetic technology to produce cattle with eye appeal and high performance. For a sale catalog, visit whitestonefarm.com.
Join the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. There are big benefits to being a member. You'll get industry news in the National Cattlemen, email updates in the NCBA Beef Bulletin, plus discounts just for NCBA members. Join by calling 866-233-3872 or online at ncba.org.
CattleCon's headed to San Antonio, February 4th through 6th, 2025, where farmers and ranchers gather to shape our industry's future. Remember, if you ain't at the table, you might just be on the menu. Check out the latest in ranching at the Texas-sized NCBA trade show. Network, learn, and grow your operation. Don't miss this chance to steer the cattle biz in San Antonio, where the Alamo spirit lives on. Visit convention.ncba.org for details. CattleCon 2025, where the beef industry meets.
Welcome back as we wrap up our show with these talented young producers. I want to ask a question about communication. How important is communication, and what recommendations might you have, Macy?
It's so important, Kevin. I studied ag communications in college at Missouri State, and whenever somebody would ask what I was studying and I answered, they'd say, "You just talk about corn and cows." Mm-hmm. And while that's a very, very slim perspective of it, it's so important that we talk about corn and cows and all the things that make up agriculture and beef production, because there's such a small percentage of the population that has the experience to speak from. And being able to share that story with whether it's the people making the decisions at the grocery store or at your state or national capitals is really what's going to carry us on. I mean, if the consumer one day decides that they're not buying any more beef, or our legislatures decide that we're not doing things correctly and they don't want us to do what we do for a living anymore, then that's the end of us. And so it's our jobs as the people who live that daily to share that story with those people who are not uneducated by any means. They just have different experiences. And so being able to share that story and putting ourselves out there in that way is really, really crucial for the continuation of our industry.
What would you say, Tressa?
For me specifically, when I look at Wisconsin Cattlemen's, there's responsibility to communicate down at the Capitol, but then responsibility to communicate back to our producers and make sure that we're aligned with what we are representing for our beef producers.
Excellent. And Rocky?
Yeah, if you think about communication, whether that's on the ranch or professionally, that's probably the most important skill to develop and to continue to develop, especially if you ask my wife. But every day, I spend my day talking about feed costs and cattle prices. So I talk about corn and cattle every day.
Last quick question. I'm curious, are you optimistic about the future of the business? Rocky?
Absolutely. We're entering into and have been in historically high cattle prices. Feed costs seem to be in check. I think we've got a really, really nice economic climate for the next few years.
Outstanding. Tressa?
Yes, I really want to see young producers get involved, whether it's in the industry with operations or whenever we're talking about politics, because the future is what we're responsible for. And if we don't act now, in 20 years, we're going to be a part of what was history.
Great comment. Yes, Macy?
Yeah, being around the young people in our industry today gives me a lot of hope, whether it's the collegiate folks or the interns or whoever that a lot of us get to interact with in our on and off the farm jobs. But then also looking at the path that's been paved for us by so many of the folks that are currently in the industry or have been before. I think there's been so much progress, so much improvement, and we've done so much with really so little in such a short amount of time that I'm excited for the future to see how much we can do and where the people of this generation and the next take us.
That's refreshing and very encouraging. Thank you so much for coming to the show and for what you're doing to ensure the future of our industry. Well, that wraps up this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Thanks again to our panel for sharing their perspective, and thank you for watching. We'll see you again next week, right here on RFD TV.